Old Testament believers were saved by grace through faith. That is, by the grace of God, whom they trusted according to his own promises. So in that broad sense, there really is no difference between the way Old Testament saints are saved and New Testament saints. But nevertheless, the obedience of faith that is required under the Mosaic covenant, for example, demands that people worship at the tabernacle, then later at the temple, that they participate in the sacrifices of the Day of Atonement, that they participate in Passover and so on. And even if very few of these people saw clearly how some of these sacrifices pointed forward to the ultimate sacrifice, nevertheless, they took God at his word that just as in the original Passover, if the Israelites sprinkled the door of their house with blood on the side posts and on the lintel, the angel of death would pass over and spare them. So they took God at his word. They believed him. They exercised faith. And by God's good grace, the wrath of God was put aside. And thus by God's gracious arrangement of things, received by the faith of the individual and family Israelite units, they were spared. And that repeated celebration of this event again and again and again ultimately creates a trajectory that points forward to the ultimate Passover lamb, which makes Paul write to the Corinthians and say, Christ, our Passover, has been sacrificed for us. So that they trusted God and his promises. By the arrangement of God, the sins were dealt with, even if they did not see the whole arc as clearly as we can see it by looking back the other direction. Hebrews had not yet been written that tied so many of these things together. Romans had not yet been written. And yet the pieces were there, and the Israelites were expected to take God at his word and trust him to forgive their sins according to all of his mercies. The sacrifices emblematic of the ultimate sacrifice that was yet to come. So in that sense, believers in the Old Testament are saved by grace through faith, but we do see a lot more clearly how that works out in God's great redemptive plan that focuses finally on Christ.